Welcome back, my friends, to Boozin' on a Budget on Titan TV. All right, everybody, it's the beer episode. Beer, 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 beer. Chug, 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 chug. We love beer in America. We love beer. It goes with everything. It goes with the ballpark, our backyard barbecues. Beer is the gateway beverage. I think beer is a place where a lot of us start, right? Maybe it's the first thing to kind of easily sneak out of your parents' fridge. They won't miss one of those beers. I'll go ahead and help myself to one of those. It all kind of starts with beer. A lot of people don't like beer, but a lot of people love beer. I happen to love beer. Beer's that old reliable at the game, around the campfire, pizza night, on the couch, at the bar. You can't go wrong with a nice cold beer. I'm maybe dating myself a little bit here, but beer has come a long way from tastes great, less filling, tastes great, less filling. We used to have the taste great, less filling argument because for so long, all of our beers were just American lagers, Bud, Coors, Anheuser, Miller, whatever, and they were all pretty much the same. Then something started to happen. People started to want to get into something different. This happened quite a long time ago. The wheels started turning for this. The first domino fell. Beer is one of the oldest drinks that were around. The Sumerians, although Sumerians, they could throw a good party. There's evidence of the first beer production by the Sumerians in 4000 BCE. Now again, for the longest time, we just had our domestic lagers, and everybody was fine with that. Your grandpop drank his Coors or his Bud, and he was all good. Well, in 1965, Fritz Maytag, yes, of that Maytag fame, of the appliance fame, Fritz Maytag, 1965, buys Anchor Steam Brewing in San Francisco, California, and he wants to come up with something, his own style, something a little different. This is the first beginnings of where the microbrewery and craft beer movement started. So you want to fast forward then into the 80s where we started to see the development of more microbreweries, and then into the 90s when the microbrewery scene just exploded. Portland, Oregon, up in Seattle, down in San Diego, California, all along the West Coast, these microbreweries became a thing. People wanted to go to the brewery itself. They wanted to try different beers, wheat beers. Pale ales started coming out. Sierra Nevada started in Chico, California in 1980, and they started with the infamous Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, the green label. This was really the OG of where our pale ales and our IPAs and some of the, again, the microbreweries and that craft brewing started out. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, I'm lucky to say, is one of my favorite ones. They started a lot of stuff with that green label pale ale. Things kind of moved on from there, from the 80s into the 90s, and then exploded. What is beer? In the broadest sense, beer is any alcoholic beverage fermented with grain. Most of the time, beer is fermented with barley. Barley, in the vast majority of beers, is the grain of choice. So really, beer is water, malt, hops, and yeast. The yeast, as we covered in episode 1, yeast to sugar, produces the alcohol. But beer really, as a base level, is really only a handful of ingredients. Now we've taken that and we're doing all kinds of experimental things with this. We have hazy IPAs, we have fruited sours, we have regular sours, we have beer with lactose in it. I can't do the lactose beers because I am lactose incarcerated. It holds my stomach in a prison. So I don't do those beers, but they are out there. But there's all kinds of beers. I have one of my favorite local beers from Las Vegas is Huddle Vanilla Oak Cream Ale. These beers right here, we're going to talk about Great Notion. These are hazy IPAs. So beer is just taking on a life of its own. But as we know, there's just a ton of different beers. What I found, interestingly enough, most of them fall into two categories. Almost all beers fall into two categories, either lagers or ales. Lagers, we know, are the lighter side of things. A little bit lighter, but they cover a lot of things. A brown, a dunkel. The other category is ales. Ales, a little bit headier, a little bit more flavor. That's where you're going to start getting into your IPAs, your double IPAs, your pale ales, things like that. Those are all ales. One of the main differences between lagers and ales, lagers are fermented at a colder temperature, which leaves the yeast on the bottom when that ferments, so it is called a bottom fermented beer. On the other hand, ales, they are fermented at a little higher temperature. It makes that yeast come to the top, so they are referred to as top fermented. The way that they're fermented, again, has distinguishing things on their character, on their taste. The way they are fermented, though, whether that be a bottom fermented beer or a top fermented beer, does affect the flavor. As we know, lagers and ales are vastly different beers. So a few more examples of lagers and ales. Lagers, your Pilsner, your European lager, German lager, American lager, so your light beer, your Kolsch, your Box, Bohemian Pilsner, Dunkel, your Kolsch, your Marzens. These are all lagers. In the ale category, of course, we have your pale ale, your India Pale Ale, your IPAs, stouts, porters, strong ales, bitters, American pales, German ales, Weiss beer, Irish stout, oatmeal stout. Those thicker, darker, headier beers, those are your ales. So I think one of the biggest things I have a lot of questions on is, what is the difference between a pale ale and an IPA, India Pale Ale? Well, your pale ales, they're going to have a nice hop character, but a medium build. They're a little bit lighter, your pale ales. Still going to have a little bit of nice hop bitterness and some nice, fruity floral flavors, but it's going to be a little bit more subdued compared to your IPAs, your India Pale Ales. They're going to be higher alcohol by volume, higher bitterness units, IBUs. We're going to talk about IBUs here in just a few minutes too. But your IPAs, they're stronger, they're hoppier. They're like pale ales turned up to 10 a little bit. But they are different, and they do have very much similarities as well. We're going to talk about some different IPAs, whether that's a New England style or a West Coast style IPA. We're going to get to that as well. So now, one of the things you might have noticed if you're paying attention to the beer world at all is that IPAs have just exploded in popularity. An IPA here, an IPA there. Every company, every brewer, everybody has IPAs, and everybody's going nuts for them, except for the people that don't like IPAs. They don't want to try them at all. They're too hoppy, too bitter for those people. Except for our beer aficionados, we love our IPAs. I happen to love IPA. It's a really great style of beer. I tell you what, if you're not really into hops, just keep drinking. You'll get to a place where you start to really enjoy your hops. I know it can taste bitter. A lot of people that are put off by that bitterness, but just keep going for it or stick to your light lagers. Personally, I went through a hop kind of revolution where I could not get it hoppy enough. I was drinking the hoppiest beers I could find. That lasted a little while, and then I've come back down to earth. I still enjoy a really hoppy beer, but I don't like it to be overblown. Some people do. So let's talk about West Coast IPAs, IPAs all the rage, and the New England or hazy IPAs. Just a different style. West Coast IPAs came first. They're going to be a little bit more hop forward, a little more bitter. They're going to have some tropical fruit, some citrus fruit characteristics, but they're going to be very hop forward. They add the hops in our West Coast IPAs. They're involved in more of the fermenting process, so there's going to be a little bit more of that hop character. In your New England style IPAs or your hazy IPAs, those hops aren't introduced until a little bit closer to the end of the fermentation process. So you're still going to get a really nice hoppy character, but it's not going to really be the overwhelming flavor of it. The hazy or juicy IPAs, the New England style, I have the hazy one I'm going to open up here, but they tend to be a little bit more on the fruit side, a little bit more floral. So there's differences in the West Coast and the East Coast style IPAs. I happen to have a hazy one. I'm going to open that one right now. Got one of my favorite old school Sierra Nevada glasses. It's got the chip on there. This one's been around for a minute. One of my favorite glasses. Look at that. I can already smell there's pineapple. My friends, you should smell the head of your beer, smell the foam. This is like pineapple orange juice. Oh, that's so good. This is a Love and Ritual 7% alcohol by volume. It is a hazy IPA from Great Notion. I'm going to talk more about Great Notion in my Drink of the Week segment tonight. For the time being, Prost. That is delicious. Absolutely delicious. All right, welcome back, my friends. Welcome to my segment, Binge Thinking. Today, in the beer episode, we're going to talk about some beer abbreviations. I just mentioned alcohol by volume, ABV. This is pretty standard. A lot of you know what it is. It's ABV, alcohol by volume. It's just going to tell you that this beer is a 7% alcohol by volume. Most beers range, I'd say from about 4.5 alcohol by volume on the low end. Your Bud Light, Coors Light, these are 4.5 to 5% alcohol by volume beers. And when it starts to climb up as we get into some of our more craft beers, some of our darker beers, our thicker beers, our stouts, our porters, even our IPAs are going to climb the alcohol by volume ladder. They're going to start going up to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% alcohol by volume. Have you talking like that? So pay attention on your next beer. See what the ABV is. Look for that. ABV, alcohol by volume. The next acronym I want to highlight is IBUs, International Bitterness Units. So IBUs are just a way for somebody to say, this is how bitter this beer is. For example, an American light lager clocks in with about, let's call it 5 to 12 IBUs, not very bitter. IBU, I should say, the IBU scale goes from, most say 0 to 100, but others say it can go to an infinity because you can just keep on cranking that bitterness up. Most beers landing in the, let's say, 5 to 70 range. Again, American light lager, 5 to 12 IBUs. English bitters, 30 to 40 IBUs. IPAs, getting up into higher IBU ratings, that's going to be your 60 to 80 IBUs. Double or imperial IPAs, which is just an IPA cranked up even more with more hops, more alcohol by volume. Those double and imperial IPAs are going to push you up to an 80 to 100 IBU score. So it's just a way for us to start getting an understanding of how bitter our beers are. A lot of beers now, they're listing their IBU score right next to their ABV, alcohol by volume. So look for your IBUs. Check that out on your next beer purchase. Start to get an understanding of where those bitterness points are. Next acronym, BA, barrel aged. Sometimes the beer is brewed and then they age it in a barrel for some further processing, give it some different flavors. BA, barrel aged. BBA, bourbon barrel aged. Look for those. I'm a huge bourbon guy. A lot of times they take a stout or a porter, a nice dark beer, and throw that into a used bourbon barrel and get some of those nice bourbon characteristics on the beer. BBA, bourbon barrel aged. DDH. DDP? What? No, DDH. Get your minds out the gutter. DDH, double dry hopped. Going to have a more hoppy character. IPA, India Pale Ale. NE IPA, New England Pale Ale. S IPA, Session India Pale Ale. When you hear the word session or the term session is on a beer, session means you're going to sit down and you're going to have a session. You're not just going to drink one or two. You're going to drink 3, 4, or more in a session. So session beers generally are a little bit lighter so that you can keep on, putting them down. Have a session, if you will. DIPA, DIPAs, double IPAs. Again, IPAs turned up, crank the notch on those. They're either double the hop or double the alcohol. Maybe not double the alcohol by volume, but they're cranked up a notch. DIPAs. And then TIPA, triple IPA, TIPA, a triple IPA, just your IPA cranked even more. Again, there are some people who used to be like me, can't get it hoppy enough, can't get it bitter enough. They want all the hops. Put all the hops all in my face. All up in my face hole. All right, moving right along to the next segment, which is Pairs With. In the Thanksgiving episode, we talked about pairing your Thanksgiving dinner with your beer. And I'll tell you what, your beers, we're not going to go too far into this. We're going to talk more about pairing in the wine issue, but match the weight or the gravity of your beer to that of your meal. So if you're having like a light piece of salmon with like a lemon sauce or something, you want to pair that with a lighter beer, a lighter lager, something like that. Maybe a saison. I'll let you look up what a saison is. You want to pair your lighter food, suffice it to say, with your lighter beer, obviously, right? As we step up into these winter months, as our weather gets colder, our beer gets darker. We're going to see our porters, our stouts, our heavier IPAs coming out, stuff like that, our celebration IPA. You want to pair these heavier beers with your steaks, your stews, your soups. These things that are really hearty and heavy, they call for a darker, heavier beer. So pair your heavier beers with your heavier meals. Makes sense, right? I want to talk, though, just base level pairing. To me, when you talk about pairing beer with anything, it's pizza. Beer and pizza go together like beer and pizza. Depending on what you're putting on your pizza, the more toppings, the heavier it is. You can go heavier in your beer, but I don't know anything that washes down a nice, cheesy, greasy, meaty piece of pizza than a beer. Man, they go hand in hand. Other traditional beer pairings that just cannot miss. Beer in the ballpark, beer in the backyard, in the barbecue. I'm telling you what, beer and hot dogs and hamburgers, salty potato chips, barbecue ribs and chicken, nuts, nachos, pretzels, bar pretzels. If it's salty and crunchy or is made on a barbecue or you can find it at a ballpark, you better bet your aching ass that a nice cold beer goes with it. So check that out. Those are some really good food pairings. I want to talk about a tech pairing though. Tech pairing, yes. Beer pairs incredibly well with an app called Untapped. Untapped is a way to track your beers as well as find them. You can come into Untapped, you can log a beer, you can search for beers nearby. It's going to take your area code and it's going to, in your zip code, it's going to take your address. It's going to find, if you're looking for a particular beer in your city or you're visiting a city, go into Untapped, search for that beer. It's going to tell you if it's around you. It will tell you where you can find certain beers. You can search for them. It'll tell you if they're in your city and where to find them. So you can start logging your beers. This is a good way to keep track of beers that you had. There's a social media component here. Your friends can see what beers that you're posting and what beers they're posting. You can interact. You can comment. My friend, I think he's got like 1,200 plus beers that he's logged in his Untapped app that he's just keeping track. He's a huge beer guy up in Portland, Oregon, so he's just keeping track of all his beers. What a reference point to go back, check them out, see if you rated them, see what you thought about them, if you wanted to buy it again, see what your friends are saying about them. Also, this app is just telling me nearby local badges, nearby local stores. I'm in Las Vegas. This popped up all kinds of cool Las Vegas beer bars where I can find certain beers, stuff like that. It's got a map on there. I can just find those beers that way. I can earn badges by trying beers. It's a really fun app. It's called Untapped. If you're a beer person, you're wanting to get into this stuff a little more, having a great resource for all the beers that you've tried, download Untapped. All right, my friends, my drink of the week tonight, it is from Great Notion Brewery. They're a brewery up in the Pacific Northwest, a Portland area brewery that I've actually just found. I'm drinking tonight. It's called a Love and Ritual, 7% alcohol by volume. It is a hazy IPA. Look at that thing. So hazy. You can't see through it. It's definitely a hazy IPA. You can see this has a lot of juice character. Again, taken after that New England or that juicy haze style. Great Notion. I'll tell you what. They're not giving their beer away. It is about $20 to $21.99 for a 4-pack of cans, which is a little bit out of my price point for just beer, I would say. However, I've now had the Great Notion Love and Ritual and the Great Notion Juice Invader, which is this one down here, and they are blowing my mind. These are some of the best beers I've tasted in like a while. The only thing that comes close recently is a beer from Fremont out of Seattle. The Fremont stuff just hitting the shelves here in Las Vegas. That stuff amazing too. A little bit lower on the price point for that Fremont stuff. But I just love the look of these Great Notion cans. I follow them on social media. They have a great social media presence. They have some really cool can designs and some really cool stuff like that. So if you can find Great Notion Brewing in your part of the world, I highly recommend them. Right now, Great Notion can be found. There are 3 Portland breweries, one in Alberta, one in the Northwest, and one off of Division. And one in Beaverton as well, so I guess there's 4 in the Portland, Oregon area. 2 Seattle, Washington Great Notion breweries, one in Georgetown and one on Ballard. There's a fulfillment station in Sacramento, California, and there is a new Great Notion brewery coming to Berkeley, California. That one's coming soon. So this stuff, I'm able to find it in Las Vegas. Not sure if you can get it where you are, but I believe you can buy it off their website in certain states. But check them out. Really, this is some of the best beer I've had in a while. Great Notion, Portland, Oregon. All right, my friends, that was the beer episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll have bits and pieces more about beer as we get on to our further episodes, but I really wanted to talk about beer tonight. It's one of my all-time favorite drinks. And I know you guys love beer too. Just pretty much goes with everything. Go get you a cold beer and listen to what I'm about to tell you. My next episode is going to be the tasting episode. So we're going to talk about in the taste episode how to really start getting our nose and our mouths prepared, what it means to taste, how we can start picking out different flavor, different aromas in our beer, our wine, our whiskey, our rum, whatever it may be. We're going to go over some tips and tricks and some really good starting points to become better tasters. Also want to talk a little bit about what makes something good. Well, here's a little pro tip. It's subjective. What's good for me may not be good for somebody else. But there are some telltale things in our beverages that we can start to pick apart to say this is a more quality, this is a more well-produced beverage. However, we're going to start to look at how to train ourselves to pick out consistency and quality in some of our favorite beverages. And we're going to learn how to become better tasters in the taste episode. That's next week. We'll see you guys next week on Boozin' on a Budget on Titan TV. Have a good night, guys.